Don't even talk about it. I didn't have gray hair when I met you. It's like it all came at once.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I mean, I'm not going to say it since I've been working for Kevin. I'm not going to say that.
I had to pass it on. I call this my CPS gray.
Oh, my gracious, yeah. Oh, my.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kevin Jamison, Assistant Superintendent here at Princeton City Schools, and I oversee the Human Resources Department for our district. We want to welcome everybody tonight for your participation. We'll have some opportunities for questions at the end of the presentation. So we're hoping to provide you a lot of great information about our district and upcoming opportunities. So as I mentioned before, I'm Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, and I've been here at Princeton now for about 4 years, and I've got about 26 years in education. We're joined today by Greg Hester with Hamilton County Educational Service Center. I'm going to let him introduce himself, as well as our Human Resources Coordinator, Rachel Mann. So, Greg?
Good evening, and thank you for coming. This is fun for us to be together. I want to thank Dr. Jamison and Rachel for inviting me. I've been in the education business for a while, and one of the things we had talked about was insight into the big picture about what leads someone to go into education. I was 28 years old when I decided, I'm going to do something with my life. I know that nobody knows any young men in their 20s who are giving it this, but I was one of those. And so I buckled down. I became a substitute teacher for 2 years in the school district where I went to school. And then it was a suburban district here in the area. Princeton used to beat us in football and basketball every year. And
Not surprised.
not at all, yeah. I would fain to tell you what year that was, but after a couple of years, I was a high school English teacher for 4 years, followed by 8 years as an assistant principal, 4 at the middle school, 4 at the high school. And then I was a high school principal for 3 years. And the district came to me and said, we'd like for you to step into leadership also. And I moved into a position called Director of Student Services, overseeing all of the students' plans that had special needs. After that, I moved into Human Resources, and I was the HR director for that district of about 10,000 plus kids for 6 years. And then I moved to Hamilton County Educational Service Center, and I'm in my 15th year in Human Resources. And so as long as we keep going strong, I'm going strong.
All right.
And so guys like Kevin coming into the group make it easy. And so, Rachel.
Thank you. My name's Rachel Mann. I'm the HR coordinator here at Princeton, and I've been here for 9 years. I'm excited that all of you came. I'm hoping that we're going to add you to the Viking Nation soon. Hopefully, we're going to help you figure out how you can get hired and join our family.
So tonight's information series is part of an ongoing information series that we have for parents and community members. It's usually the third Thursday of every month, and we've covered a lot of topics. So we've really been anticipating this topic focused on human resources. In most school districts, you find this is the season when there's a lot of activity around teacher recruitment and staff recruitment for the upcoming school year. And also taking into account there's been a lot that has happened in these last couple of years with the pandemic in terms of obtaining substitute teachers and just making sure that we have adults in front of our students to support their needs on a day-to-day basis. So tonight we're going to talk about some insights related to what we've had to do around the pandemic, also around the substitute teacher shortage. We're going to discuss the current job opportunities that we have available within the district, and a little bit about the employment process. So the next slide is going to cover a little bit about our focus as a district. And that slide really focuses on our vision. So I'm going to advance the slide here. Okay. We'll get some assistance with that, but okay. It's a little delayed, so we'll go back. Great, thank you. So our vision is that Princeton City School District is committed to preparing each student to become a lifelong learner and responsible for citizen ready to meet the ever-changing challenges of the future. With families and community partnerships, we will create innovative teaching and learning opportunities for each student, and both inside and outside the traditional classroom. We will help students develop knowledge, critical thinking, collaboration skills, and a thirst for learning necessary to be successful and navigate culturally diverse and technologically advanced world. So our vision is really wrapped around this notion that we serve a very diverse population of students, and we're also seeking a wide variety of partnerships in our community. And oftentimes you'll hear us say our community is our campus, and there have been some developments recently related to the Tri-County Mall in our community, and you'll be hearing more and more about how we'll open up a STEAM Institute focused on our middle school to high school age students located at Tri-County Mall. It's an opportunity for us to continue to be innovative in our educational practices, and because of that, it's very important that we continue to look at ways to do recruitment. Our mission is empowering each student for college, career, and life success. And how we do that is we engage in more of a student-centered framework. So we really want to make sure that everyone within the district plays a role in that process, whether it's a teacher or intervention specialist, paraprofessional, clerk typist, or secretary. Doesn't matter your position. It's important that everyone understands what our mission is and that everyone plays a role that's really focused on our specific goals. And we have 5 very targeted goals that we will focus on, and I'll share that in just a little bit. But that really drives the work that we have. So the next slide is going to focus on our student makeup. So over the past couple of years, we've served somewhere just north of 6,000 students. And that's been a pretty consistent number for us throughout the district. And so we have a total of 11 school buildings in the district that serve our students. We have, of course, our Princeton High School, Princeton Community Middle School, as well as an innovation center that's really focused on alternative pathways towards graduation to support students who have a variety of needs, or also to accelerate and get into the workforce through the innovation center is another area of focus. We also have 8 elementaries within the school district that serve a wide variety of communities. Yesterday, we had our board meeting and our English learner department presented, and we talked about the fact that students within Princeton represent each continent within the globe. So we have students that speak such a wide variety of languages and dialects throughout the district. So it's important that we continually work to try to diversify not only our language skills within the district to support students, but then also just a variety of skill sets. The class of 2021 was 408 students, and we've been consistent with our graduation numbers on a year-to-year basis. This slide also kind of outlines a variety of different targeted groups that we serve. So based on free and reduced lunch counts, we're at about 67% economically disadvantaged. Princeton is also a district of choice when it comes to services for students with special needs. And so we serve close to about 13% of our student population who are students with disabilities. Our English learner percentage is 22%. That's up from just about 19% 2 years ago. Behind Columbus Public School, I think we are the second highest in our number of students who, or not our number, but our percentage of students who are English learners. And because we also serve students who may be in the foster care system or homeless, as you can imagine, there's a wide variety of skill sets and supports that we need to have in place. You'll see our ethnic breakdown in the pie chart, and you could see that we have a very diverse population of students, and that really gives you a good idea of the variety of supports that we have in place to support the students. The next slide really focuses on our staff. So at Princeton, we have 786 staff members, and that's inclusive of our administrators, teachers, and support staff. We have 45 administrators within the district. and we have 453 teachers. And how that's classified is that anyone who is certificated to be a teacher, a special ed teacher, an English learner teacher, a counselor, a certificated school nurse, they all fall within that teacher category, and they're represented by our Princeton Association of Classroom Educators. And then we also have 288 support staff, and the support staff fall within that category of paraprofessionals, clerk typists, custodians, building grounds and maintenance, and they all definitely serve the supports of how we operate our facilities within each of the buildings in our district. So this slide also gives you a breakdown of gender, race, and educational level. So you could see that more than 50% of our staff members have obtained their master's degree. So we value that education in our classroom educators, as well as our administrators and other personnel within the district. Princeton is made up of quite a variety of communities. And so altogether, you'll see that we support students from 3 different counties, Butler, Warren, and Hamilton County, also 6 municipalities. So when you think about Evendale, Glendale, Woodlawn, Springdale, Lincoln Heights, and Sharonville, we are also taking into account that we not only serve those communities, but we also serve Deerfield Township, which extends into Warren County, and then there's also Sycamore Township and Westchester Township. So there's a wide geographic area that we cover, and we support a lot of the communities that surround us. So going back to our strategic plan, as I mentioned before, we have 5 goals. And those goals areas are focused on really reaching for the goals and objectives and strategies within our strategic plan. So our goal areas include responsibility, equity, diversity, and inclusion, academics, communication, and health and safety. The board a year ago approved an updated version of our strategic plan and also our equity plan, which we'll share here on the next slide. So our equity plan really targets making sure that each child receives what they need to develop their full academic and social potential within the district. We're also really focused on putting systems in place to ensure that every child has an equal chance for success. And you'll see there that there's some very specific rationale that we'd like to target in really supporting our students. And so thinking about, just the knowledge, skills, and actions that are explicitly focused on practices. So tomorrow, our equity team will be meeting, and it's represented by multiple staff members within the district who really look at creating opportunities for each and every student within our district, regardless of their background. And so it's really supporting staff to provide high-quality, equity-driven practices is a key area of our work. And another aspect of our equity plan I'll talk about later that's focused on recruitment of staff within the district. So going back to those staff types that I talked about before, we have 4 different types of classifications. So our certified staff belong to our Princeton Association of Classroom Educators, and that includes our teachers, school psychologists, certificated school nurse, speech and language pathologists, and counselors, Title I teachers, anyone who holds a certificate and works directly with students in a classroom setting or in a support setting fall into that category. Our second category is our classified staff, and Rachel's going to talk a little bit later about how some of the staff within that classified category have to apply through the civil service testing process. So she'll talk a little bit about that. But as I mentioned before, that includes our building grounds and maintenance, cafeteria staff, paraprofessionals, health aides, and security monitors. Our superintendent, principal, director, assistant superintendent, and coordinator positions all make up our administration, but we also have administrators that focus on the business and financial operations of the district as well. So payroll administrator, treasurer, director of building grounds and maintenance and food service, all of those individuals come together to be on our leadership team, and we meet on a monthly basis just to ensure that we're aware and focused on the specific needs of the district. And then we have a non-bargaining group of staff members who really support a lot of the administrators within the district, but there are also very technical key roles within the district that fall into the category of like technology, as well as student monitoring of attendance and supporting families who may have difficulties with their children attending school on a consistent basis. So we have attendance officers, we have information technology specialists, and computer technicians. So those are the four classifications that we have within our district. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to talk a little bit about the benefits that we offer.
Well, the benefits that we have here at Princeton are very competitive. Not only the fringe benefits, but also our pay scales. When you compare them to other school districts in the region, we're very competitive and usually fall within the top 3. Some of the benefits that we offer are health insurance, and we have several options so that it can meet your budget. We have flex accounts, vision and dental, paid life insurance plans, supplemental benefits that you can have through like Aflac and Fidelity. We have PTO days. We have 15 paid sick leave days per year, vacation days for people who work 11 months or 12 months. We have paid holidays, usually between 14 for the people who work 11 or 12 months, and about 7 for people who work just school year only. We also have a great employee assistance program. Through that program, you get 10 free counseling sessions. It's also extended to your family. They have financial assistance planning, and they also have legal services, so which a lot of people in our district utilize those services. And the other really big benefit to working in a school district is the retirement system. You would retire as a teacher in the state teachers retirement system, STRS, and as a classified employee or a non-bargaining employee, you would retire through the school employee retirement system, which is STRS. You don't pay Social Security when you work in a school district, but when you retire, if you've paid into Social Security, you get a blended amount between the two.
Thanks, Rachel. As I was mentioning before, in a focus of our equity plan within the district is really targeting recruitment and really growing our own staff members who fall within that classified area. We actually employ quite a few paraprofessionals who come to us maybe out of college or with a background that involves an undergraduate degree. And so we survey last year and this year all of our classified staff members in the district to find out if they have an undergraduate degree, such as a BA or BS, or even if they have an associate's degree. What we're beginning to do through some activities that we started last year with Ohio Department of Education by applying for the Educator Diversity Grant, but also through partnerships with area universities, they actually can apply for grant opportunities as well to help a lot of our classified staff members who have undergraduate degrees return to school and get teacher licensure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these so that you can learn more. The first is an ongoing partnership that we've had with Xavier University. We've worked with Xavier on a number of different projects over the years, from positive behavior intervention and supports to areas related to cooperative teacher support for student teachers, as well as a number of targeted projects that have been more focused like on our students. This year, as well as next school year, we'll be working very closely with Xavier to help a number of our paraprofessionals and classified staff members return to school. So this past January, we had a cohort of 8 paraprofessionals who returned to school in order to start classes towards earning their teaching license. So It's a combination of different supports. I mentioned before how we've been able to get some grant funds through the Ohio Department of Education around this work, but also Xavier University has been able to apply for grant funds to really focus on diversifying our educator pipeline. But also there are Teach grant funds available through Xavier. And Teach grant funds, regardless of your ethnic background, really focus on the math, science, special ed, and foreign language license areas. Those are considered to be high need license areas, and so Teach grant funds are available to those staff members who get accepted into those licensure programs at Xavier. The other program that we've been working closely with is through the Ohio State University Center on Education, Training, and Employment. And they have more of a self-paced online program for individuals who have an undergraduate degree who are interested in going back to school to obtain their teaching license. It's more of a set of self-paced modules that they complete in order to obtain an alternative resident educator license that they can then take some additional courses through OSU's Professional Development Institute to make a transition then to a 5-year traditional professional teaching license. So it is a little bit more of a self-paced, individualized direction to go in terms of going back to school compared to Xavier. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we have a diverse array of different options with our partners in post-secondary education. The third one I'm going to focus on is through a collaboration between the Student Resource Center, Eastern Gateway Community College, and Central State University. And with this option, your eligibility is you don't even have to have an undergraduate degree. You can have some college or an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. Eastern Gateway Community College will work with you, do that transcript assessment, see if you need to start with Eastern Gateway to get the necessary courses for eligibility to enter Central State University's teacher college program. And once you reach that point, then the support through the Student Resource Center will continue to help that individual complete the necessary steps towards licensure. So we're in ongoing conversations, not only with these 3 entities, but several others to continually look at how we can partner with different university partners to offer reduced tuition or very low cost tuition rates, as well as in some cases with grants and eligibility status free. So it's really a great opportunity, and we're looking to expand that in any way that we can. So our superintendent, Mr. Burton, has been quite involved on a national basis working with a number of different organizations and partnerships. And so one of the things that we've really been blessed to learn about is the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And so we are currently in conversations with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and Accelerate Great Schools. They will be coming to Southwest Ohio in April. Specifically, they'll be coming to Princeton on April the 7th. So we've set up an opportunity tomorrow to meet with Thurgood Marshall and about 20 students from different historically black colleges and universities across the nation to come to Princeton and learn about the positions that we have available, and also to do some engagement and also opportunities for interviews. So tomorrow we'll do a webinar, but then on April the 7th, we'll actually have all 20 students here at Princeton, and we'll take a tour of the district and talk a little bit more about our mission and see if there's a connected interest between their interest in coming and working for Princeton and our interest, of course, to diversify our teaching population. So Rachel's going to talk a little bit about the application process and how to apply.
Have any of you already applied for positions here? You have? Okay, so you know. It's pretty easy. There's several places you can go to find our open positions. One of them is on our website under the HR department and then current employment opportunities. The other place you can go is Ohio Teaching Jobs. All of our positions will be listed there, but like I said, you can get to them either way. You can go through our website if it's easier for you to navigate. They all must be completed online. Don't email your resume to me or anybody else in the district. Upload all of that information into your AppleTrack profile because we can see everything that you put there. Make sure you list all of your experience. A lot of times when we hire for a position, your pay will depend on your years of experience. So if you don't put it in there, we're not going to count it. So make sure you put all of your years of experience in there. If you are considered for the position, an administrator will contact you. Sometimes it's through AppleTrack. They will email you to schedule an interview. Sometimes they'll reach out by phone. And once that happens, you'll come in and be interviewed by a panel that the administrator has selected, usually from the school building or the department. And if you are selected, then they will recommend you to the HR department, and then we'll contact you and bring you in for onboarding. Contingent upon you passing a background check. So that's one of the most important things. And once that happens, you get your start date, you get board approved, and you're part of the Viking family.
Yes. So we thought it was important to talk about the current vacancies that we presently have open. And so I've spotlighted them here, of course, starting with the custodian positions. Keep in mind that those are not only first shift, sometimes they're second shift, oftentimes maybe even third shift work schedules that allow the district to continue to have clean and safe facilities. As you can imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic has increased our level of sanitizing throughout the district and making sure that buildings and the surfaces that are in the building are clean, and we're maintaining those COVID protocols through each school year here moving forward. And then also our paraprofessional positions fall into different educational classifications or subgroups, if you would. So the first is our regular education paraprofessional. That individual works closely with the general education teacher in the general ed environment. They also work with some kids with students with disabilities and English learners, but they're there to really support the regular education general ed program. We also have special education paraprofessionals. And as you can imagine, there's a wide variety of students that many districts serve in terms of students with special needs. We have students who are fully included and participate in all of the general curriculum activities, but then we also have students who have medically fragile needs or needs around autism or social communication that require more self-contained, smaller settings. And so our special education paraprofessionals really support the goals and objectives on the IEP in collaboration with the teacher. And then, as we mentioned before, 22% of our students are English learners, and some of our buildings have close to about 50% English learners in the building. And so our English learner support comes through not only that teacher who's licensed to teach students who speak other languages, that TESOL licensure, but they also get support from our paraprofessionals. And we hire a lot of bilingual paraprofessionals, going back to that conversation that we had earlier about the various languages that we have in the district. We're always looking for individuals who can speak other languages in terms of really kind of meeting the student where they are when they're first coming to the school or the school district or even sometimes the country. Of course, secretary positions, building grounds and maintenance positions, and then we also have a health aide position. So we are blessed to really have such a wide variety of supports within each of our buildings, specifically around some of the healthcare needs of our students. And so looking at the acuity of need in each individual building, when we're looking at like diabetes, asthma, and other types of medical supports that a student might need during the school day, we have to ensure that we have certificated school nurses, licensed professional nurses as well as registered nurses, and then also health aides. So a health aide is an individual who doesn't necessarily have any medical training, but they get ongoing support clinically with the certificated school nurse in being able to carry out some of the functions within the school office. And that group meets on a regular basis just to ensure that we're up to speed with those needs. As I mentioned before, we employ licensed practical nurses and registered nurses, and they fall within that health service specialist category if they don't hold a certificate as a school nurse. That's sort of a additional level of certification that registered nurses who complete their undergraduate degree, like a BSN, can go and get that additional set of courses to be licensed through the Ohio Department of Education as a certificated school nurse. Those individuals actually fall onto then our teacher pay scale and receive the same benefits through the union that supports them. Our certified vacancies presently include a school psychologist as well as an intervention specialist. We also have a gifted intervention specialist position that's open right now. So those are our present openings. But as you can imagine, this is the time when we learn about retirements, or if some of our staff members are relocating to a different state or a different school district, then that's the time when we start learning more about additional openings, or if there's an increase in our student population in some capacity or in some specialized group, we want to ensure that we have enough staff to support those needs. So I would say this is the time to really be checking out our website, and Rachel and Greg are going to talk a little bit more about some of those websites and how to stay tuned as different districts, preferably Princeton, would be your area of focus for job openings that are occurring in the spring. Rachel?
So are there any people attending tonight that have teaching license? You do? Okay. Is it current?
Actually, we're good with the
Oh, okay.
I was just curious to see if
Okay, so any teacher applicants have to have a valid current teaching license through ODE. If you're interested in being a paraprofessional, all of our paraprofessionals have to have the ESEA endorsement, whether you work in a Title I building or not. So you would need to either have 48 semester hours completed in college coursework, or you can take the parapro test. And I have included later in the slides a link for you to go to for information for that. You can't be considered for employment until you have that permit through ODE. And then I have something on here for anyone who's interested in coaching also. If you want to be a coach in a school district, you also have to have a permit through ODE. Some of the positions that Dr. Jamison mentioned for the classified staff fall under civil service examination through the city of Sharonville. So it would be secretaries, clerk typists, account data clerks, building maintenance, grounds maintenance. They all have to take a civil service exam. These lists that are created from the people who pass those exams last for 2 years or until they're exhausted. If we hire everybody off the list, then we do another exam when another opening comes up. I'm actually going to be putting an opening for building maintenance worker this week on Friday, so you can check our website. You can always check our website under the HR department, employment opportunities, and scroll to the bottom. If there's a civil service test coming up, it'll always be there. If you have any questions about any of the ways that you can apply, or if you want to check on civil service, or you are trying to get a permit and you need more information, my email is on the website. You can always send me a message or call the office and I can help you.
Okay, so we're going to hear from Greg Hester, and he's going to tell us a little bit about some of the things that we can't tell you sitting here at Princeton. He has a better kind of understanding of the landscape, not only in Southwest Ohio, Hamilton County, but also the state of Ohio, as he's talking with HR departments throughout this area. And so we wanted him to come to share a little bit about just what's going on with the particular supports that are in place for the districts, but also a little bit about working for a school system and what that actually means.
That's a great setup, Dr. Jamison. Thank you very much. So as Dr. Jamison mentioned, one of the roles that I fulfill is here regionally, working for Hamilton County Educational Service Center. Every county in the state of Ohio at one time had an educational service center that they were assigned to, and they didn't have a choice. It was a relationship driven by the state. And what happens here is that over time, the 88 counties have begun to combine educational service centers, and I think there's about 52 of them. Here, we're in a very populated area in Hamilton County, and so I serve as a chairperson for personnel administrators across our 4-county area, and that would be Hamilton, Butler, Warren, and Claremont. And in that group, both Dr. Jamison and Rachel participate, and there are 50 people on the roster. And so it is a dynamic group of individuals that are the professionals that are continuing to get information, share information with each other and from each other, and it's very, very good. We also belong to the state organization of personnel administrators called the Ohio Association of School Personnel Administrators, and then of course there is an American Association of School Personnel Administrators. And this is all designed to have connectivity to the governmental work that takes place and the things that are coming through. We have insight into what comes through the Ohio Department of Education that we'll talk about in a moment. So I asked Kevin, I said, I remember coming through graduate school toward a principal's license and then a superintendent's license, and I learned some things that I have never, ever would have known had I not actually sat in courses. Now remember, this is the guy in his late 20s that had to make a decision about what are we going to do. We have to grow up one day, right? Well, to start with on the slide, I've got a talking point there called the history of American education. And when you think back to the very beginning, when we established our independence from England, from Great Britain, they had decisions to make about how things were going to go. And it was mostly driven by what they didn't like. But there were some things that needed to be reckoned with. And this is where the Bill of Rights came into play and the amendments to the Constitution that was drafted that we still abide by to a very, very large degree. And one of those things was, how is the public going to be educated? So we had 13 colonies. Now we begin to create states. And the federal government at that time, having its hands full, said, what we will do? We will assign the responsibility for educating the public to the states. And so the states all did that different ways. Some of them did it exactly alike, but there's only so many things on the menu, right? And so in Ohio, what they did was they said each county will have a superintendent, and that superintendent is going to be responsible for the education of everyone. Now, this is a history quiz. Now, I was an English teacher, so Ohio became a state in what year? Anybody have it? 1803, and she was getting ready to get the award.
Okay.
Well, in 1803, we were coming to Ohio on flatboats down from Pittsburgh, and and Kenton County, because of Simon Kenton, the explorer, bringing people down. This was very primitive, and so Hamilton County was a strip of land. If you're looking at the map, it was a strip of land that stretched from the Cincinnati area all the way up the western side, all the way up to Toledo. And so the education of those people were given the responsibility to a superintendent to oversee that. I can just hardly imagine how that worked. But what occurred is that it became formalized in 1914, how early it was. So now we've got more population coming through. We are still a very, very rural state. but still the education has to take place. And so off we go. We become more populated, mostly around the cities, and then World War II, and then, you know, the glory years of the 50s, if we could say those are glory years, and then we get into the 60s, and so there's all kinds of things that happen there. But in those early days, the Patriots, and as they grew forward into the 1900s, there were things that were very sacred to people. Their basic freedoms, their freedom to practice the religion they wanted to, the freedom to live where they wanted to. And so I've got a talking point here about the 3 trusted institutions in America. You know, and I reflect on these every now and then over the years in my career of thinking about the potential conflicts that we work through in the educational system right now. So there could be an argument. There could be a fourth one could replace one of the 3. But when you look at government, religion, and education, I remember being a little kid watching the funeral after the November 22nd, 1963 assassination of John F. Kennedy, and the nation mourned. And I learned from my mom and my dad that he was a very important man as young as I was, and I understood that. And I saw people crying. And I learned more about education the next year when I was in kindergarten, and they were singing the song in the 64 election, Goldwater, Goldwater, he's our man, throw Johnson in the garbage can. And they would sing it back and forth. And the 64 election of Lyndon Baines Johnson, who went on the next year to pass the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that we still abide by to these days, that provided funding, federal funding for economically disadvantaged children. It's fascinating. And so in those days, you know, many of us tell the story about when you get in trouble at school, you're not really worried about what happens at school. You're worried about what happens at home, you know, and that still exists in a lot of ways. But one of my questions to many is often, how much do we still trust those 3 institutions, you know? And it's an interesting conversation. I think, and as I have talked with professionals in my area and where I work, COVID-19 has done something to our society that nothing else has ever done. And it's taken us to a place, not by war, you know, not by famine, not by anything else except the disease, that caused us all individually and as a society to examine who we are and why we are, because we were limited to Zoom conferences and social media and things. We learned things in education, how to educate kids in new ways. The research has been dynamic about the things that need to be in place, and there's going to be a new normal coming out of COVID. And it's interesting that just this week we're here because, you know, the Ohio Department of Health, they're lifting the mandates. You know, you can see district after district, state after state lifting the mask mandates and all of this stuff. And we're slowly but surely getting back to normal. Now we have to recapture the kids. So we'll talk some more about that as we go along. But public education from the very, very beginning is an institution that every single student is invited to. There is no excluding anyone. And that's an important thing because when Kevin outlined the magnificent job Princeton is doing with all of the supports for all the students, it's necessary, you know, because the function is to bring each student to the level of his or her potential, regardless of who they are. But education is compliance driven. There are a lot of rules we have to follow. It's not always bad, but what does this mean to be an employee? You know, like over at Lincoln Heights, you've got rules you've got to follow, I know, you know, and we all do. But what does it mean in the educational setting? Well, we've got federal, state, and local requirements. And I'll give you an example of the range of how that works. So the federal requirements from the very beginning established that through the laws that have been passed and through Supreme Court cases and things, something like Title I funding, you know, for for kids that need those supports. Title I is a federal law, and when we qualify for Title I, we have to comply with those requirements. Has anybody ever heard of the difference between church and state? You know, so the separation of church and state. You know, here's a quiz question. So if Dr. Jamison goes to the high school graduation and says, everybody bow your heads in prayer, is he allowed to do that under federal law? The answer is no. He's not. But if the valedictorian, I don't even know if we have a valedictorian. If the valedictorian says it, is that different? That's a student who is doing what a student under free speech is going to do, not in violation of any law. And there's been all kinds of controversy about that. But those are the kinds of things federal law does to us. Federal law has also provided COVID relief monies. And you've seen the millions of dollars that have been approved, and that's federal. And so we have all kinds of hoops to jump through to access those funds in order to get them to the student level so that we can get kids caught up who have lost that learning during the COVID times. There is state control. And sometimes we forget how important the state is. Dr. Jamison had referenced licensure many times. Our reality is that every single adult that is going to be somewhere, somehow, potentially in the care, custody, and control of a child or of a student must have an ODE credential along with that background check. That is required by the Ohio Department of Education. And so if we don't comply with that, if you don't comply with that, then your treasurer and your superintendent are in big trouble. And see, we're not going to put them in that situation. Always that happens. There is also Ohio Revised Code. This is where, you know, when people talk about the code, the Ohio Code, that's Ohio Revised Code. Chapter 3319 is filled with everything about education that we have to abide by. And it's changing all the time, and we have to keep up with all of that stuff. So there's state control that we're dealing with. And then the local control. In the previous slides that Dr. Jamison reviewed about the Teachers Association, the Classified Staff Members Association, they have a collective bargaining agreement with the school district out of the 1983 collective bargaining law. And what that says is that a group of employees together can negotiate for things like salary, benefits, working conditions, whatever all that is. And so we have a happy medium, and off we go. And so that's an example of local control. The other thing that happens is there are times when administrative guidelines need to be created because things are happening that bounce out of the box that don't come under federal law or state guidelines or board policy or the handbook. So sometimes there are things that happen where decisions have to be made, and there is that local control about what needs to occur. So we're going to touch on this in a few minutes, but what happens is administratively everything that is occurring, and I know this because I live this, but everything that is occurring that hits these two here in the office, they're thinking, oh, wait a minute, we can't just do that because a person has a right to representation, or we can't just do that because if we force someone to work past their work hours and they go over for 40 hours a week, then we're going to owe them overtime. So they're always thinking about the compliance that comes from a variety of areas. So for me, this is interesting, and I'm kind of I guess an old school geek, but it's important that we understand that there's this stuff. But it's there for our benefit because as employees, we all have a common vocabulary that we understand once we get to know one another in our respective positions. So it's very, very exciting. The next slide talks about the many roles in the school district. And Dr. Jamison kind of reviewed those, you know, including all the folks that are here in central office, the teaching staff, the educational assistants, you know, the custodians, the food service workers, the secretaries. And by the way, those are the most important people in the school district, because if ever you think as a building principal you need to get something done and you haven't been nice to those folks, yeah, you know where I'm talking, where I'm coming from. And that's the fun of it also. But in addition to all of those roles that are there, We also have parents and guardians and family support systems that are there that sometimes speak on behalf of parents and guardians. And most importantly, the most important role in the school system is the student, him or herself. And it's so important. And that's why we're all here. That's the starting point, is because in some way, shape, or form, we have a desire to make the quality of life better for the kids. That's what we do. So while you are working with students, we hope you are motivated to apply, get a job, because we can put you to work somewhere. And while you're working with students, there's nothing to be afraid of, but be aware that there is a whole world of compliance that's out there, and you'll learn about that as you go. And you can't forget that school process. You know, one of the things that struck me was, this was years ago, and I had a substitute that was in the building and brought me a student and said, "Look at this student. My grandmother would have never let me go out of the house like this." And I said, "Well, who raised you?" So, "Well, my grandmother did, and she would never let me wear these clothes. Look, these pants are hanging off of his bottom. Just look at him." And she was all upset, all upset. And I said, I understand. Is there anything else besides the pants that are the problem? "No, that's it, but it's deplorable." "Okay, well, I understand." I said, "Johnny, go have a seat over here." And so I did a little coaching with my substitute teacher, because just because a student shows up and doesn't meet what that existing paradigm or that upbringing is, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means we have to correct someone to think about why we do what we do, because there's always a bigger picture and always something more that needs to be considered. How many times have we run into that? There's more to it than meets the eye. And so that's part of the fun of it also. There's also a chain of command. I'll use the example of being in my current job. My title is Executive Director of Human Resources, which means nothing more than a glorified problem solver. And I've got a whole building of people that arguably come to me with a problem of the day. Sometimes they want to come straight to me and forget about that chain of command. And I say, "Well, have you talked to Julie? Have you talked to Thomas? Have you talked to..." No. "Okay. Well, I'll help you, but next time, see if you can work back through." The building principal is the greatest example. You know, mom's going to call the principal because the superintendent won't take the call. And the reason the superintendent won't take the call is that the governor won't take the call. I'm being facetious, you know, but people want to deal with somebody right at the top. And when we're working in the school system, we always have someone that is going to be able to help us with that problem. A perfect example is somebody who's working in the classroom with a teacher, if you're an educational assistant. And so when there's something that needs to be worked out, that educational assistant works it out with the teacher. And if the teacher needs to get support from the next level, then that goes to the supervisor or to a principal. So a chain of command is something important to remember. So we talked about the 3 types of employees, and you did a good job of outlining that. Yeah. And the question is, which one will you be? And I have this question here purposefully, because when I was making a decision to make a career change, I knew one thing. I knew that the retirement system in Ohio was going to be good for me, because I was 28 years old. Now, I had $7,000, but I had been working for a long time. I gave it all to Xavier University, all of it. But I knew that that was going to be good, and I knew that I was going to be a school administrator. That was my goal. I'm going to be a school administrator, and I hope to be able to work in my home district. So I was living in Lexington, Kentucky. Do we have any Wildcat fans here? Anybody from UK? None. Oh, this is going to be a hard month for me, I know. I went to UK. I was down there working, and I decided to come home because I was going to help my home school district and my home church, and I'm going to be a school administrator. That's all I knew. So then I worked to try to figure it out, you know. And so, what is your goal? You know, it's important. So we're driven by one common denominator. We have a desire to help kids, is it? Or do we have a desire to help our home community? Do we have a desire to do something for the greater good? There's something inside of each one of us that brings us here, that motivates us. And so I'm skipping forward, but what I want to pick on here is on the slide, who is watching while you're doing what you're doing? There have been some significant changes over the years. You know, back in the day when beepers, anybody remember beepers? People get a beep, and that means that somebody's contacting them. I forgot how they work, but boy, those middle school kids had those beepers. You know, so we got to do something about the beepers, said the English department chair. And so then we got to flip phones, you know, and then the kids could stick their hand inside their purse and go, and they could be clicking those messages without even looking. Yeah. I asked one little girl in class one time, I said, how can you do that so fast? She said, watch. I'll text my girlfriend over there. It was amazing, and it was thoroughly frustrating. And then they got the cell phones. But the big one is social media. So when you watch the news, pick anything, I mean, you can watch anything. Somebody's videoing somebody. Somebody's videoing the teacher. Somebody's videoing the bus driver. Somebody's videoing the custodian. Somebody's videoing the coach. Did you see the coach? He grabbed the kid by the face mask. I got it on camera. And so that's the world we're in right now. We all know it. We're not intimidated by it. But we can't ever forget who is watching, you know.
So, Greg, I know that, you know,
Well,
one of the key things.
Let me do one more thing. I
One
know
more
I'm talking
thing.
too long.
No, you're good.
Let me do one more thing, because
One more.
this is something that that I think is helpful.
Okay.
So, what time is it?
It's got about 10 minutes.
I'll make this very, very brief. So, reasons why a career in education is a great career.
Yes.
We talked about, you know, the desire to help kids, or the desire to help a home community, or to make an impact in a community. There is job security. There's summers off. You know, I usually don't talk about this stuff, but it's also an opportunity for each of us individually to enhance our skills and develop lifelong friends. You know, schools are filled with great people that have a common bond. So, if you're in it to shape the next generation, this is the occupation for you. We'll skip forward. Sorry about taking too long.
No, you're good. I think, you know, that's one of the things that we really wanted to accomplish, was to really get a good understanding of just the geographic landscape of those federal requirements, state requirements, local requirements, and regardless of the type of position that you work within the school system, things that you really have to be mindful of in the role, because many people get into the field because of the passion for working with students and families and really contributing to the community. And even though we're very good in our heart in doing that, we also have to be mindful of some of the key things that's important for us to track and monitor with our own professional role within that system, but then also the laws that govern the work that we do. So one of the key things that we've really been focused on these last couple of years during the pandemic is substitutes, and making sure that we have enough substitutes to cover classrooms. And there have been some significant challenges with that that are not unique to Princeton. And so there's been some changes in some local and also state level requirements around that to attract more substitutes within the system. So we're going to kind of take some time for you to kind of describe that and the work that the county's doing in that area.
Very good. In your packet, then, there is a page that has substitute challenges and opportunities. And the following pages we're going to go through somewhat quickly, but as Dr. Jamison mentioned, through Hamilton County Educational Service Center, what happens there is that we provide all the substitutes for Hamilton County. And so they are arranged by where people want to work, but the employment comes through the Comprehensive Substitute Solutions is the name of the subsidiary organization with Hamilton County. So when you look at this, the requirements to be a substitute of any kind is that there is no college degree required at this time, and for all substitutes there needs to be a satisfactory criminal history, that's the background check, and then there is a substitute teaching license for teachers, and educational aid permits need to have the aid permit that we talked about. The Princeton, on the slide for Princeton school substitute, The substitute teacher is paid $100 a day. Educational aides are $12 hourly, as are the secretaries. Food service is $11 hourly, and the custodian is $13 hourly. So if you were signed up to be a substitute employed by us, you would be taking your jobs to work at Princeton, and you can pick only Princeton, and you can limit or expand whatever. That is your complete choice. The expectations of a substitute teacher are that there is professionalism with the students and staff. There is instruction, there is engagement. There's training that goes along with this. You maintain availability in the substitute system. And what happens is there's hiring and preparation for the first day for the supports for sub-teachers. There is an online training course, $200 for completing 14 hours, and discussion with instructional coaches. There is a visit from the instructional coach also during the first week to make sure that everybody's settling in. The next slide talks about the frequently asked questions for substitutes. How long does it take to get started? It depends, but 1 to 2 weeks, and this is about the turnaround for ODE to approve the license or permit. If there's a blip in a background check, the approval process is going to take a little longer. But you can work for 1 to 5 days when school is in session, and it's always your choice about the assignments. And we are still hiring for this school season. As a matter of fact, it's going to be a busy time coming up. Speaking of busy, when Kevin asked me about this day, I was thinking, wait a minute, that's not going to be St. Patrick's Day, and that's not going to be the first day of the NCAA tournament.
I thought you were going to say something more district-oriented.
Wait a minute, what am I missing here? Okay. Yeah, it's a busy time.
Yeah.
It's a busy time for school folks. And the benefits offered are contributions to the public retirement system that Rachel was talking about. It is impossible to underestimate the power of the retirement system over time. It's extremely important. We are not eligible for health benefits nor paid time off as a substitute. So how this works is it's an easy app on your phone, Frontline. Go into Frontline, it's right there, and then the second click will get you right into the home screen, and then you would get signed up and receive notifications of open assignments. So the next slide talks about how to apply. Go to www.subsolutions.org, click on subs, and then the desired icon that's there. Very exciting time. Yep. And so we do hope to see you as a sub-employee.
Great. Thanks, Greg.
Great, Kevin.
So Rachel's going to wrap up talking a little bit about another opportunity to get involved, and that's volunteering at Princeton. As we oftentimes say, it takes a village to raise a child, or it takes a village of partnerships in your community to support a whole school system. So there, with that in mind, is plenty of opportunity for volunteering within the district, and so Rachel's going to talk a little bit about that.
I don't know if any of you are parents in here of any of the students in the district, but if you are, you don't need a background check to volunteer in the school building. Only if there's a field trip or an instance where you might be unassisted with a student. So we could use volunteers in every building. All you need to do is contact the secretary in the building, in whatever school building you want to volunteer. They will give you a volunteer packet. You complete that, the principal signs off on it, and then you can come up here any Tuesday or Thursday between 2 and 4 and have a background check that we pay for, because we appreciate any time that you're willing to give to the students and the teachers to help out during the school year. It's really just that simple.
Can you talk about the instances where a background check would be needed in a volunteer situation?
A background check is needed for any volunteer who is not a parent or guardian. If you don't have a student in the building, you have to have a background check. If you are a parent or a guardian, you don't have to have one unless it's a field trip or an instance where you would be alone with any students unsupervised. You have to have a background check.
And then the websites.
So this is a really good page for you to keep your hands on, keep with you. If you want to go check out the job openings that we have at any time, www.ohioteachingjobs.org has all of our vacancies listed, as does our school website, princetonschools.net. Sub Solutions is if you want to become a sub in the district. www.education.ohio.gov. That is where you need to go to get information for teacher licenses, para permits, educational aid permits, and then the ets.org is where you can go to get information and register to take the paraprofessional exam that you'll need if you don't have the 48 semester hours to become a para in the district.
And spotlighting the ODE website, education.ohio.gov, you'll notice on the home page at the very top towards the center is a place for you to log in. When you click on that login icon, it's going to take you to OHID. It's a portal where you'll have to create a username and password to get the process started to apply for your license or permit. And that is regardless if you're a teacher, paraprofessional, coach, that's the specific spot that you would need to go to for that. So I know that there's been a lot of information that we've shared, and we really appreciate you coming out and listening and watching so that you could learn more about the work that we need to do to ensure that we have plenty of supports and personnel within the district to support the needs of our kids. So we wanted to open it up now to some questions from the audience here, just to see if there's any pieces of information that we shared that you need more information on. No questions? Oh, we got a question in the back. Great.
I was just wondering, when do you guys, by any chance, post, like, on the website, jobs and
Right. So you should start to see those positions get posted as we get into the months of March, April, and May, because oftentimes that's when we get information about a couple of things. One is anybody who is deciding to retire, especially in the classified category, they can submit their request to retire at any point. A lot of our teachers tend to submit their early retirement notification usually after the first few months of the school year, but it's very easy sometimes to also submit something later in the year. At that point, when we get that, we then begin to put out a position request form that then allows all the necessary sign-offs to ensure we have the funding for that position, which then gets posted onto the website. So you should start seeing that, but we do also have a couple of other opportunities to have direct interface with the HR department and a number of our principals in the district. So if you are currently a licensed teacher, then first stay tuned for the postings on the website as well as ohioteachingjobs.org. But then on April the 5th, we will be at Xavier University for the Southwest Ohio Teacher Recruitment Fair. And anybody with a teaching license can participate in that fair and sign up for a face-to-face opportunity where we'll do screening interviews, and a lot of our principals in the district will be participating in that. As Rachel mentioned, there's a folder containing all of the applicants that goes to the principals for the positions that are within their building, and they really navigate that interview process and then make the recommendation to the Human Resources Department, which is what we're doing, is telling them about the benefits, telling them about pretty much kind of the contract and pay, and then really getting them slated for board approval. And a lot of folks are going through that process, usually as early as April, May, for the next school year. You're welcome. Any other questions? We really appreciate you coming. Oh, yes.
So you said that the substitute teaching, when they no longer require a bachelor's, what did you do? Is there any advantage of having a bachelor's? And
Okay. I'll have Greg answer that question.
Actually, no. So the employment of a substitute teacher at the rate the district is paying is the only thing that would be a variable. So there's not an advantage for assignments or pay or anything. So no, you're qualified.
Get your transcripts and all that from?
Well, that's
yeah.
all part of the employment process.
Okay.
And so when you go in and to start that process, they've made it relatively easy.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Great
Okay.
question.
I have been in the, I've got a loud voice. Okay. I have been a teacher for 25 years in Cincinnati Public. I've been out of teaching, obviously, a long time. Decided to go back. It would have been easier for me to fill out this form if I did not have a college degree. I have, at every step, I have met some kind of problem, even to getting my fingerprints. They had difficulty getting my fingerprints to print. It took me like 10 times, and they weren't sure. I was told I might get a call because they might have gone through. Because of my age, getting a transcript was extremely difficult because I graduated before 1994. Your system, because you graduated before a certain date, you have to go through a different process. So it's taken me a month so far. Not easy.
I'm sorry about that. So is there anyone at the office that's helping?
There is a woman named Melissa that has checked in with me, but very often her information, for instance, the other day she said, well, you really don't need a transcript. Wait a minute, I have a provisional. I do not have a permanent certificate. I have the equivalent of a master's, but I never bothered to get a master's. So as a result, I do have to have a transcript. And my college did not make it easy either. A lot of these things are, you no longer do your own system, nor do colleges. There's a special clearinghouse that you go to. So I'm sorry, but it isn't an easy system.
But that's not for substitutes.
That is for substitutes. I don't want to go back to teaching. I thought I could help because they kept saying you needed substitutes. I figured I could do this. I loved teaching.
Well, this is why I'm asking if someone at the office is helping you.
They helped me through the background check. Actually, that was at the Department of Education over there in Hamilton Avenue. I find it even difficult to find the correct phone number.
I can help you right after this meeting,
Okay.
and I'd be happy to.
And I think I'm almost to the end of the process. My transcript came yesterday. So I think
Wonderful.
that's the final step. But who knows what other thing that they're going to throw at me.
Okay. No, I'm happy to talk to you right after the
Thank you.
meeting. You're welcome.
Any other questions before we wrap? So again, thank you both for participating in the panel today. We hope it's been very informative, and our hope is to offer more opportunities to share information like this on an annual basis. So thanks again.